Thank you all for joining us. My name is Mike Connolly. I'm a new state representative for Cambridge and Somerville. Thank you. Last year, I was one of just 2 candidates to actually defeat an incumbent for a seat in the state legislature, and I did it with the help of Mass Peace Action, so thank you for your support. Just want to talk a little bit about, what called me to public service, what led to my getting involved with public service, and how the topic under discussion today around ending nuclear proliferation and really ending militarism more broadly is so essential to everything else that I'm trying to accomplish in the state legislature. So I was born in Dorchester. My parents divorced when I was about 5. My mother and I moved to public housing in Norwood, Massachusetts. I benefited from things like Head Start as a kid, but as you can see, I'm a giant. I was good on the football field. I got a full athletic scholarship to Duke University, and then after that, I came back to BC Law, became an attorney, and along the way, growing up in public housing, it was instilled in me really that the Democratic Party would be the party that would fight for anyone who faced a difficulty in life. But as the years went by and as I saw the profound wealth and income inequality in our world, as I looked at the influence of money on our political system, I really thought it was important that we as Democrats and we as people on the left do a lot more to engage our political system and try to make sure that our party and our government live up to those values that really sustained me when I was growing up. So that was really, what called me into public service. I had an opportunity to work on things like affordable housing and sustainability here in Cambridge, and that all culminated with a huge grassroots campaign. There were literally hundreds of volunteers in our community who supported me in various ways, knocking on doors, making phone calls, to help us win our election last year. The gentleman I defeated had actually won 38 elections in a row prior to our victory, so it was a shocker for some. So thank you all in the room who have helped us on this struggle. So now I'm at the State House and I'm fighting for a bold, progressive agenda. I'm proud to say that I would call it a democratic socialist agenda. I'm fighting for a $15 minimum wage, paid family medical leave, single-payer health care, Medicare for all. Thank you, Congresswoman, for your applause on that. I'm fighting for affordable housing. I think that this idea that we had of public housing in our country, we're kind of losing it. I think we should actually go back to raising revenue and saying, let's put these funds into building the housing. So I'm fighting for public housing, I'm fighting for affordable housing, I'm fighting for criminal justice reform to end the, to end the racist war on drugs and to end mandatory minimum sentencing, which I'm sorry to say we still have here in our Commonwealth to a far too great of an extent. And one final thing, I'm fighting for the Safe Communities Act, which would make us a sanctuary state so that we don't lose sight of the fact that we're a nation of immigrants. So those are some of the things I'm fighting for. But I think it really struck me when I saw the flyer for the event and how this event coincides with the 50th anniversary of Dr. Martin Luther King's Beyond Vietnam speech, which is also known as A Time to Break the Silence. And in that speech, Dr. King said how difficult it really is for any of us, whether we're in government or whether we're just, activists acting on our own as citizens, how difficult it really is to stand up to the war machine, to stand up to the military and to these imperialist notions that have always been a part of our country. There were some people who said that when Dr. King gave that speech, it was as if he was signing his own death warrant, and he faced a lot of criticism for giving that speech. But I just want to quote one paragraph because I think it's so important to what we're talking about today. He said, "I'm convinced that if we are to get on the right side of the world revolution, we as a nation must undergo a radical revolution of values. We must rapidly begin to shift from a thing-oriented society to a person-oriented society. He said that when machines and computers, profit motives, and property rights are considered more important than people, then the giant triplets of racism, materialism, and militarism are incapable of being conquered. And it's just amazing how those words are so prophetic and how they ring just as true today, 49 years later, as they did when he delivered that speech in New York City on April 4th, 1967. And I think as I think about these progressive movements that I'm involved in, and I think about the campaigns that I've been, I think that we've given some really good voice, those of us on the left, to issues of income and wealth inequality. I was part of the Occupy Wall Street movement, and there was a time where this idea of inequality really wasn't on the radar. And today it's on everyone's radar. Even Donald Trump as a candidate would talk about inequality, even though his policies would do nothing but make it worse. On the topic of racism and white supremacy, we clearly have so much more work to do, but there are movements like Black Lives Matter that are engaging people in our community and that are really elevating this discussion in a positive way. And it gives us a path forward as we try to continue to deal with the legacy of racism and continue to fight white supremacy that's represented by Donald Trump and that is all too common all over our country. But then when it comes to that third triplet, that third evil triplet that Dr. King spoke about 49 years ago, militarism and imperialism, I'm afraid that those of us on the left have so much more work to do to give voice to that concern for our generation. And so that's why, thank you, that's why I'm so happy to be here, be a part of this. So one of the ways that we can really address the role of military in our budget is this People's Budget campaign. And we just had a workshop a little while ago where we talked a bit about the People's Budget. It's really a roadmap for resistance, and it's powerful because it provides a positive alternative. It's not just saying we are opposed to this, we don't want that. It's saying here's what we could have, in particular, if we didn't commit some 54% of our discretionary budget, as Professor King pointed out, to the military. If we were able to dial that back to a more reasonable posture, what are all the other things that we could do? We could have affordable housing. We could have healthcare as a human right. We could have pre-K. Just like I had a Head Start program, I ask, why isn't it that every child in our state and in our country cannot have all of the early education, all of the child care, all of the public education, all the way through college and grad school that they could possibly need? We could have all those things if we adopted a People's Budget. I'll say a few words about our own state budget. I'm glad we're joined by my colleague, Rep. Provost from Somerville, and we work very closely in the State House, really trying to tackle issues in our own state budget. So there's a fact that I want to share with you. Our state budget is about $3.5 billion less today than it was 17 years ago when you adjust for inflation, and that's not an anomaly. Over the past 2 decades or so, we have underinvested by about $50 billion here in our Commonwealth, and that is because we had a series of tax cuts about 17, 20 years ago on income tax, on dividends and interest, on corporate tax rates. We cut taxes across the board, and we have lost tens of billions of dollars of investment right here in Democratic Massachusetts, where we have a supermajority of Democrats in our legislature. We still cannot find the momentum or the willingness to actually raise the revenue we need to fund the MBTA, to fund public housing and affordable housing, to fund all of the things we need to continue to be a Commonwealth that we all love and appreciate. Thank you. So, I would just, stand here to say that, as a new state representative, as, a member and a supporter of this organization, I would just, ask us all to continue to echo this call that Dr. King gave some 49 years ago, and to understand that to address any one of these three giant evils, whether it's the militarism, whether it's the materialism, or whether it is the racism, to address any one of these three evils, it's going to mean that we tackle all three head on, because they're all interconnected, and it's going to be impossible for us to really have the kind of progressive society we want if we allow, you know, this nuclear weapons or this military budget to continue the way it has. So that's what I'm looking forward to do. I'm really grateful to join all of you today, and I'm looking forward to hearing the Congresswoman speak soon, and I'm looking forward to many more fights and victories in the months and years to come. So thank you for having me.
Take that back.
Okay.